But first, something actually that the Lib Dems have in the last 10 minutes issued a statement on is this cyber attack causing chaos at airports around Europe, including Heathrow. The Lib Dems have said, as I say, very recently that the government should be putting out a statement urgently to establish whether the Kremlin is involved, whether Putin has responsibility for this. Now, we have no evidence that he does, but it's interesting that the Lib Dems have made a statement saying the government need to clarify that. Heathrow is one of several European airports to have been hit by this attack today. It's caused delays and affected flights. This passenger at Heathrow has been waiting more than 10 hours for a flight to Cape Town for a work appointment.
I needed to be in Cape Town latest 7 a.m. They were willing to make some adjustments for me if I make it there by 9:30, but KLM, that's the airline I was supposed to fly with, hasn't been able to, there's no customer service, no customer support at Heathrow Airport from this particular airline. They're not, it's not possible to reach them through their customer helpline. So it's quite a very frustrating situation.
Yeah, it is a classic thing, isn't it, when the airline isn't the party that's been attacked, but the airport. The airline often just doesn't have the information you need, but we're always told, contact the airline. What are we supposed to do about it? The attack, which hit last night, appears to have knocked out the IT systems used by airlines for automated check-in and boarding. It's left hundreds of flights delayed. Passengers and luggage are now being checked in manually. Brussels airport is actually one of the worst affected. 14 flights cancelled there. In a moment, we'll talk about who might be responsible for the cyber attack and the growing trend for these kinds of cyber attacks. But first, let's talk to Claire Irvine, the head of travel at the Times and Sunday Times. Hi, Claire.
Hi.
Hi. What do we know about this attack so far, then?
Well, we know that there's been 16 departures cancelled across those affected airports, Heathrow, Berlin and Brussels, and 13 arrivals cancelled. So, that's a significant chunk of passengers. There's thousands of passengers who've been affected. And of course, it's not just the passengers, as always with these situations, who were on or meant to be on those flights that have been affected, but there'll be a knock-on effect in terms of delays to upcoming flights, and just a lot of disruption. If you're flying today, it's from any of those airports, it's going to be a pretty miserable experience.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't blame people for looking at the news and thinking, oh, never mind, I'm going to stay at home. But the advice is always go, contact your airline. I mean, what kind of disruption are people going to be in for?
Well, there's been delays of up to 3 hours. If your flight's still operating, you could still be looking at that kind of delay. A long list of delays of less than that. But of course, when that's looked at in scale, if you're at those airports, it's, as I say, it's not fun. Crowded, confusion, frustrated passengers, generally a lack of information all around. As you say, sometimes the airlines don't actually know themselves. Some pretty disaffected passengers and operators.
I'm just curious, actually, as someone who travels a lot for your job, if this is caused, or at least affecting, the automated check-in, if it is because so many airlines now use automated processes, do you think in the long run it was kind of worth it because it speeds up travel the rest of the time? I mean, it opens yourself up to this kind of attack, doesn't it? But it is easier in a way now with QR codes and with everything digital, as you'll know.
It does. It's not only, it doesn't only speed things up when you're in the airport. I think it's, although I do travel a lot, I am quite an anxious traveller. I know what can go wrong. It doesn't help. And I think if you can check in early, particularly those airlines like EasyJet, we can check in up to a month early. It gives you a lot of confidence that you've checked in. I know several people who've been helped by those early check-ins over the summer because they've realised their passports had run out. And of course, it does save time in the airport. But if that ever goes wrong, and I have a different, for example, surname to my kids, so quite often I can't check in automatically before I get to the airport, and it does make you feel a little bit edgy before you get there. And of course, it does take so much more time. I would say, on balance, it's definitely worth being able to do this the 99% of the time that we all can. Of course, it's not going to help any of those passengers today who are wishing they could check in manually, or at least beat the queues to check in manually. But yeah, I think it helps.
Indeed. I guess the question is how long it takes for the airport to get back to something like normal. What are you reckoning will happen?
Generally, we're looking at 2 to 3 days or even a week. This, I think that it doesn't seem to have affected BA, for example, who had a backup system. And it's not peak time for travel, which does help. There'll be capacity on other flights. And we hope, that you'll be looking at things getting back to some kind of normality tomorrow afternoon or Monday morning. I really hope tomorrow afternoon because I'm flying tomorrow afternoon. So I will report in and let you know how it is.
Okay. Good luck with that. Thank you, Claire. Claire Irvine there from the Times and Sunday Times, head of travel. Edward Lewis is the CEO of the global cybersecurity consultancy CyXcel, and also director at the Cyber Monitoring Centre. Good afternoon, Edward.
Good afternoon.
What do you think the hackers are hoping to achieve here?
Exactly what we've seen, candidly, Ollie. Chaos, disruption, bringing this very much to the fore in terms of the public's consciousness. Talking to a lot of people over the years about cyber, many have always felt that most of the attacks aren't proximate to their daily lives, to what they do day to day. But as we've seen increasingly over the last 18 months, and particularly this year, attacks are now shifting. They're shifting to things that really hurt what we do day to day. And the intention is to cause a bit of societal erosion. Is to undermine that social cohesion that we enjoy so much in this country and here in the West.
And presumably to hold them to ransom, right? I mean, that's the end game, isn't it?
A lot of the time, but not always. So in some ways, the financial gain is a collateral benefit. But some of these attacks increasingly now are motivated by causing economic and social instability. It's about underwriting the confidence in government, the confidence in control and authority. And the fact that ransomware is often deployed as part of these attacks, as I say, is sort of the grease that helps these attacks gain a bit of momentum. So yeah, there's a financial benefit to them, but it's not just about the money.
In the last half an hour, the Liberal Democrats have been suggesting from their conference that there might be some Russian involvement in this, or at least saying that the government should establish whether there is. What do you make of that?
Well, it's great to sensationalize, and it's possible that there could be Russian involvement, of course. But the reality at the moment, unless there is intelligence that they are privy to, that those of us in the cyber community are not, is that there is nothing that points to Russian involvement here. It's obviously something that just draws attention and obviously gives them something to voice concerns about, to put pressure on government. Always have to be careful with the political angle on this. Absolutely, it's right to flag, but I don't think we should rush to point the finger of blame at the Russians until we have more information, more intelligence available, and then it should be released through the appropriate channels at the appropriate time.
Okay, well, I mean, in that spirit, I don't want to force you to speculate on who this is, but on the other hand, let's put it this way. If you heard that a government or a state was behind it, as opposed to a rogue group, or, hackers who had met online, or just criminals who were interested in extorting people, if you thought there was a government behind it, would that surprise you?
Some government involvement wouldn't surprise me, but direct government involvement would. It's very rare that political attribution is possible in incidents like this. There's a lot of speculation about state-sponsored attacks, where the state encourages or provides the resources to independent groups to be able to carry out attacks on their behalf. But to directly point to Putin and the Russians here, I think is hasty.
Are airports particularly susceptible to attacks like this? Is it because they all use shared systems?
Airports, listen, let's face it, technology is playing an ever more important part in our lives in lots of different respects. But in technology in transport hubs like airports where there's a lot of footfall, a lot of passenger movements. Yes, there's that technology, that shared technology. And if you're able to knock it over, then the propagation effect of that, the impact of that, occurs much more rapidly than it would in a more isolated system. So I don't think that it's right to say that airports have a particular problem. But they are potentially going to be more regularly targeted by those looking to cause widespread chaos and disruption because of those passenger numbers and because of shared software. But it's really important also that we keep the balance in check here. We are concerned about technology, we're concerned about the security of technology, but there is no doubt here about the safety of passengers. Safety is not in question. This is not airside, this is groundside. This is about check-in and baggage systems. Planes are safe to fly. The risk is disruption, not passenger safety.
Are the attackers, though, evolving their methods to stay one step ahead? When these things happen, people often amp up their cybersecurity, don't they? But are you inevitably working with knowledge from previous attacks, not from this one, and therefore you're not actually defending yourself against what might happen next?
I mean, look, I don't think there's a sort of an escalating sophistication in these attacks, or indeed in sort of the MO that we see. I mean, they've remained pretty similar over quite a number of years. What we're seeing, though, is more technology coming to market being used for efficiency gains, but without necessarily the interrogation of the security of that technology that we need to see. Regular testing, proper backup plans. What we're also seeing are much more complex supply chains. So although as consumers, as passengers in this scenario, we think immediately about who's the airline that we're using, which airport are we flying from, at the back end of that process of travel, whether it's for holiday or business, there are many, many more suppliers and providers in the chain now than we've ever seen before. They provide quite important but niche parts of the overall ecosystem through which our travel plans are affected. And it's targeting of supply chains and vulnerabilities within those supply chains, which is really the shift that is having the impact and that is causing sort of the big disruption that we are now seeing through these attacks. When you look at what's happened already this year in this country, when you look at Co-op, when you look at Marks and Spencers, when we see what's playing out at the moment with Jaguar Land Rover, all of these attacks have a common feature, and that there was a weak link in the chain, in the supply chain, not necessarily in the systems and the technology at the front end that those primary operators, those primary organizations are using. So supply chain due diligence and understanding exactly how the technology is operated and secured becomes essential for anybody looking to outsource any part of their operation to a third party.
All right. Cybersecurity expert Edward Lewis, thank you for joining us.